बोलिए सद्गुरु महाराज की जय, सच्चे दरबार की जय. Thank you everyone for joining us for another spiritual discourse. Last week we started the topic about the obstacles on the spiritual path. We discussed the first 4 obstacles. The first one being Vyadhi, which is illness. The second one being Styana, which is mental inertia. The third, Samshaya, meaning doubt. And the fourth, Pramada, meaning carelessness. The fifth obstacle on the spiritual path is Alasya, meaning laziness. Paramahansa Yoganand says that a lazy person will never be able to attain God. Scriptures say that the biggest disease in the human body is laziness. We know what we need to do. We know that it needs to be done, but we don't do it. Why? Because of laziness. Think about something you have done in the past. One thing that you did haphazardly, didn't really commit to it, didn't give it the time and effort it needed, versus something that you did diligently. You gave it the time and effort it needed. Which one brought results? I'm sure you all will agree the latter. On the spiritual path, often statements like, I will do it later, I'll sit in meditation later, but that later never comes. And the only way to overcome this is to build a discipline of meditation. When you're starting off, build a certain time, whether it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, does not matter, but the same time every day. And dedicate that time to your spiritual practice. Initially, yes, it might feel like it's a chore, but once the mind starts to settle and you start to be at ease with the practice, over time it becomes enjoyable. You'll have beautiful experiences where this practice does not seem like a chore anymore, but you will actually enjoy sitting in meditation. Just like we do not forget to feed the body on a daily basis, this meditation is food for our soul, so don't forget to feed the soul. There was an acharya by the name of Sumed who had a disciple Vartant. And Vartant one day asks his teacher that intelligence is needed to learn, to comprehend what is being taught. But you are always returning our focus to discipline. Why is discipline so important? His teacher says, I will give you an answer one day. Few days later, he takes a trip with his disciples to the river Ganga. And as they go there, they all take some water from the Ganga and feel blessed that they've received some of its water. The teacher asks, do you know where the Ganga starts and where the Ganga ends? And immediately Vartant says, yes, starts in the Gomukh and ends in the Ganga Sagar. So the teacher asks, what if the 2 river banks were not available? What if they were not created? What would happen to the Ganga then? Vartant said that it would be scattered. We wouldn't be able to gain the benefits that we receive from it today. His teacher replies, this is the answer to why discipline is important. Discipline provides those river banks to the mind of a disciple so that the energy is focused in one direction. When the mind is scattered, energy is scattered, and one cannot live up to their full potential. The 6th obstacle is Aviratti, meaning attachment to the senses, distracted, indulgence in the senses. We all connect with this outside world through our five senses. And over time, because that's what we have been taught since childhood, we engage our senses to such an extent that they can easily distract us from our focus, from our goal. Think about when you're at work and an email pops up or a text pops up. Do you quickly grab your phone to look at it? Immediately your focus has shifted from the task you were doing. And we're bombarded. We live in a world full of distractions where your phones are blowing up with notifications. We have distractions all around us. And when it comes to a meditation practice, many people try and engage the senses in their meditation practice as well. For example, practices where you focus on a candle, or you focus on the image of something, or where you recite a mantra, or you listen to some music while you're meditating. All of these techniques are engaging the senses. We're trying to use the senses to control the mind. And from experience, I'm sure you all will agree that that happens for a very short amount of time. The truth is, if you almost want to think of it in a workplace, the senses are the employees and the mind is the manager. Would the employees be able to control the manager? No. The manager controls and directs what the employees are doing. In order to control the manager or give the manager some direction, we need someone who is in a higher position, maybe like a CEO, to give that direction to the manager. The same is true. Our senses are like the employees, and we're trying to use an employee to control, to give direction to the manager. But the truth is, for the mind to be controlled, for the mind to be channeled in a particular direction, we need to tap into the CEO, which is the soul of our body. So in true essence, Dhyana, the meditation practice that has been explained in the Vedas from the beginning of time, is beyond the mind. These exercises of focusing on a candle or on a picture or reciting a mantra, they are amazing concentration techniques, but not meditation. And this might be a topic for another discourse in the future. But in order to control the senses, in order to engage them within, once you are awakened, once you've received that gift of Brahmgyan, then through constant practice, the senses will start to go inwards. And you will be less and less prone to give into the distractions of the mind. Think about the ocean. On the surface, there are lots of waves, but the deeper you get, there is stillness. The same is true with our meditation practice. Initially, there will be lots of waves in the form of thoughts, but the deeper you get into your practice, you will be able to be still and be able to see with clarity your true essence, your true form. The seventh obstacle is Bhranti Darshana, meaning false perceptions. As we travel the spiritual path, the ego rears its head from time to time. where a disciple might feel like they're more spiritually advanced than they actually are. And when this happens, it gives rise to arrogance. It prevents one from pursuing the path with honesty and humility. Let me share with you one example. There was a man that lived in a little village, and he would get angry very often over little things. So one day, upon the advice of a wise person, he decides to leave everything and go up onto a little hill and sit there and meditate to overcome his anger. He went up there and he sat and practiced in whatever way he knew. People used to bring him food. Days, weeks, months passed by. And one of the villagers told him, "You've become a saint. You've overcome your anger. I think it's time that you come and grace the village with your presence." The man thinks to himself, "That's right. I haven't been angry in the last little while. I've overcome my anger." So he decides a certain date that he would come and grace the villagers with his presence. When that date is decided, the whole village gathers together and people from neighboring villages come as well. There's a huge crowd. And as he comes down the hill to the spot that he was going to give his darshan, was going to grace these people, as he's walking towards there, through the crowd, someone steps on his foot. And immediately he screams in anger, "Don't you know who I am? You've stepped on my foot." Yes, you might get a laugh out of it, but this is true. Sometimes, as we go through this path, the ego makes us believe that we are more spiritually advanced than we actually are. And there's a test for this. When you have a spiritual experience that makes you a better human being, makes you less egocentric, makes you more open, more serene, more aware, then you know that this experience is helping you grow. But when it has a negative impact, then you know it wasn't a high experience after all. The simplest way to overcome this impediment is to never think that you've attained anything. This path is so infinite. But if you constantly remind yourself that my goal is liberation, the experiences you have along the way, yes, accept them, enjoy them, but continue to remind yourself that this is not my goal. That's great that I've had this experience, but I still have a ways to go. If you constantly remind yourself of your goal, constantly push yourself in that direction, then you'll be able to overcome this ego. You'll be able to overcome this impediment, this obstacle that comes up in very, very subtle ways. The eighth obstacle is Alabhda Bhoomikatva. Alabhda meaning unobtained, Bhumi meaning earth, and Katva meaning bed. So meaning a lack of stability, a lack of reaching a position. Often when you travel this path, there are moments where one can feel despondent and feel like, I've been practicing for so many years, but I haven't gotten anywhere. I haven't attained any particular state. Keeping motivation going on this path, keeping yourself motivated on this path can be a challenge. And sometimes we look at other individuals and say they're having beautiful experiences, their lives are changing, but nothing is happening with me. Let me share with you an example of Sudipantaka, who was a disciple of Buddha. One day, Buddha saw him crying, And Buddha asked him, what happened? Suddhi, why are you so upset? And Suddhi says that, why am I born so dumb? Why am I born so stupid? I can't remember things, all the things you teach us. It's so hard for me to grasp and learn them. Buddha says, at least you're aware of your foolishness. But there are many foolish people in this world who think they are wise. Saying this, he gives Suddhi his broom and says, as you do your service, always say to yourself, I sweep the dirt away, I wash the dirt away. Suddhi tried to remember the statements as he did his service. Sometimes he would remember one and forget the other, or remember the second and forget the first. But he continued for 20 years. And 20 years later, Buddha said that, Suddhi, you sweep every single day. And you are not any better at it than you were on the first day. But you still persevere. You still continue to do this without giving up. As important as it is to make progress, it is important to persevere in the same endeavor. And this is a quality that I do not see in any of my other disciples. Suddhi attained enlightenment because he continued to persevere and he did not give up. If you can remember that growth does not happen in huge milestones, but we're growing daily. If you stop and reflect back about 2 years ago, 5 years ago, things that bothered you then do not bother you anymore. How you reacted to things back then, you do not react in the same way. So growth happens in a very subtle way. But the important path is not to give up practicing, is to continue making the effort. Sri Ashutosh Maharaj often said that when you go to work for 8 hours, you don't exactly work the whole 8 hours. You have conversations with your colleagues, you take a coffee break, but you still get paid for the whole 8 hours. So if that happens on this materialistic plane, then why would God keep your time, your effort, would not reward you for your time and your effort that you have put in your spiritual path? So brothers and sisters, continue to practice. Growth happens in very subtle ways. There are no huge milestones on this path. So continue to practice, continue to persevere, and don't give up. God will surely reward you when it is time. The 9th obstacle is Anavasthitatva, meaning an instability. Not being able to maintain a higher point that was once attained. For example, if you can hold your breath to a count of 30 for one breath, but if you had to do that continuously, it might get hard. Or for a sports player who is known as the man of the tournament this year, but to maintain that title again year after year requires a lot of effort and a lot of practice. The same is true for the spiritual path. We might touch an experience, but we fall back to a state that we existed in for a long period of time. The only solution to this is consistent practice. As long as you continuously practice, often the example of a bird flying was given. Sri Ashutosh Maharaj said, as long as you practice every day, it's like a bird that flaps its wings. But say you do not practice for a day, 2 days, a week, then the bird can glide to a certain extent. But if it doesn't start to flap its wings again, then it's definitely going to fall down. So think of your practice as flapping those wings. Continuously flap those wings on a daily basis so that you are constantly evolving, you are constantly growing. Now, hearing all the obstacles on this path, one might feel like there's way too much involved. This is way more difficult than what I signed up for. But this is what I have to say. Life is a struggle, whether it's in the worldly life or the spiritual life. Struggle exists. If struggle is not there, life doesn't exist. But it's better to struggle and attain your ultimate goal of liberation than struggle and leave this world with nothing. So start on that spiritual journey. And the simplest way, without even thinking of all the obstacles, the simplest way, remember 2 things on your path. One is prayer. Pray as many times as you feel. There is no restriction to praying only once a day. Whenever you feel, say a prayer. Continuously pray to keep your mind engaged in your spiritual progress. To keep that wisdom alive within you so that you can recognize right from wrong. So that you keep yourself motivated to walk on this path until you reach your goal. And second is constant practice. Practice on a daily basis. Build a discipline with your practice. Even if it's for a short amount of time initially, it will increase as you grow to enjoy your practice. But you have to start somewhere. So build a daily discipline, not just Monday to Friday. There is no weekend on the spiritual path. So a practice that you practice on a daily basis. Every single day, build a discipline and continue to practice. Don't give up on your practice. Don't get discouraged by it. Continue to put in the effort and you'll start to see results on your own. If you hold on to those 2 things, then you can overcome any impediment, any obstacle that is put on your path. Being aware of the obstacles definitely helps us recognize them a lot sooner when they show up. So I hope this satsang was informative in that context. And I urge you all, if you don't have a discipline, build a discipline for your spiritual practice and continue to practice. If you already have a discipline, don't give up, continue to practice. On that note, we'll end today's discourse. Thank you all for joining. Till next time, God bless, stay safe.